Welcome, fellow stargazers. Congratulations, you've taken another step towards the realization. This video is dedicated to discussing one of my personal favorite philosophies of all time, the Advaita philosophy. This is an ancient philosophy which finds its origins in the Upanishads. It was later popularized by the works of various philosophers and scholars such as Adi Shankaracharya. Before we jump into the philosophy directly, let's talk about some science, which will seem unrelated, but I promise it will connect later on, so stay with me. Let's understand the science in form of a story. You are the main character. You get up in the morning and you recall having a great dream last night. You open the gates of a balcony and feel the cold breeze. You later get to your morning routine, then have some food. The food smells great and it tastes even better. Then you find this video on your feed and click on it. As this video runs, you can see the visuals being shown and can hear my voice. As you can see, you've used all your basic senses in just the first few hours of your day. So how do these senses work? Well, to start off, you have certain sense organs which are associated with their respective senses. Each sense organ is connected to its own sensory nerve. For example, eyes are associated with the optic nerve, ears with the auditory nerve, and nose with the olfactory nerve. Let's continue with the example of eyes. You are currently seeing this video. The light from the screen reaches your eyes and is concentrated using your cornea and lens onto your retina. From here, a complex series of events occur that ultimately transfer the information of the light in form of electrical signals. These electrical signals are called action potential. This action potential is then carried on by the optic nerve to the brain, where the brain translates this information, allowing you to finally see what's in front of you right now. This same mechanism of action potentials is seen in other sense organs as well. So essentially, everything that you are able to perceive through your senses is because of these action potentials being carried to the brain, where it translates it into an output. Now here's where the philosophy comes into play. As we saw, the world transfers certain information to our sense organs, and these organs then carry the information to the brain, which generates an output. Well, if that's the case, then could it be possible that it's only the information that exists, and the world as we know it doesn't even exist at all? This is the basis of the Advaita philosophy. This philosophy states that since everything we interact with is based on information going into our brain, there is a high possibility that the world as we know it doesn't even exist at all. But it's only the information that exists, and our brain creates an illusion of a world based on that information. This is a key point of the Advaita philosophy. It treats the world as an illusion. The word Advaita itself means non-duality. It explains how there is no separation between the self and the surrounding, because there is no surrounding. There is only information and the self. This self is called Atma, and when this Atma gets a material body with all its worldly desires, karma, and senses, it is called a Jeev. Meanwhile, the information or the ultimate truth is called Brahm. Please note that this Brahm is not the same as Brahm, the God, or Brahman or Brahman. Brahm is used to refer to the only existing ultimate truth of the universe. And the interaction of the Jeev with the Brahm through senses is what creates the world or Jagat. So ultimately, we have three components in the Advaita philosophy: Brahm, Jeev, and Jagat. To understand the philosophy in depth, we need to understand a Sanskrit shlok which was given by Adi Shankaracharya. Brahm Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahmeva Napara. This line is basically the entire summary of the Advaita philosophy. It can be broken down in three parts, and each part explains some component of the philosophy. Brahm Satyam, which means that Brahm is the only and ultimate truth. Jagan Mithya, which means that the Jagat or world is Mithya, meaning an illusion. Please note that the term Mithya does not mean non-existent. Advaita philosophy does not say that the world doesn't exist at all. What it actually says is that the world doesn't appear to us in its true form. This is explained using the example of a rope in a dark room. due to the lack of light, the rope appears like a snake. Similarly, due to the lack of knowledge, the world appears to us in a form which is only an illusive projection of its true form. What is this true form? Brahm. So now, we've established a relation between Brahm and Jagat, in the sense that Jagat is nothing but an illusive appearance of Brahm. We've also established a relation between Jeev and Jagat, in the sense that Jagat is what is manifested when a Jeev interacts with Brahm, using his senses. Now then, what is the relation between Jeev and Brahm? That is explained by the third part of the Sanskrit saying, Jeevo Brahmeva Napara, which means Jeev and Brahm are equal or the same. This is one of the most interesting points about the Advaita philosophy, as it equates a simple Jeev such as you and me to the very Brahm or the very God that we worship. Advaita translates to non-duality, and I suppose the creator being the same as the creation is truly non-duality of the highest order. Advaita says that Brahm is like an endless ocean, while all Jeev are its tiny fragments like drops of water. If you recall, the pure form of Jeev is Atma. With that context, Brahm essentially becomes synonymous with Paramatma. This equilibrium of Jeev or Atma, Brahm or Paramatma, and the Jagat which is manifested due to their interaction is explained with the example of deep sleep. When you are awake, you use your senses to interact with Brahm, and thus the illusion of Jagat is formed. However, when you are in a state of deep sleep, only your true conscious exists, since all stimuli from the world is cut off. Thus, with no interference of the senses, the Jagat only appears in its true form, which is Brahm. It is thus the ultimate goal of the fragment that is Atma to once again become one with the Paramatma where it came from. This is exactly what is referred to as moksha, a state where a Jeev is freed from the cycle of deaths and rebirths because it cuts off the Jagat altogether and becomes one with Brahm. An attempt at achieving this state is made using the ancient techniques of yoga, or yoga as the pseudo-intellectuals like to call it. Being in a deep meditative state, similar to deep sleep, where you cut off all external stimuli and only focus on what's within. You reach your purest state, which is Atma, and realize its oneness with the Paramatma. You would be thrilled to realize that the word yog itself translates to addition, adding the Atma back to the Paramatma, adding a Jeev back to the Brahm. This is only my opinion, but I believe this realization of oneness with the Paramatma is what's symbolically represented through all those stories where a sage meditated for years and centuries and eventually received a blessing from a god. A very beautiful implication of the Advaita philosophy is that since we are all fragments of the same supreme entity, that is Brahm, we are all intrinsically the same. The Jeev part of us is full of material qualities and thus differences. But the Atma within is pure, and it's the same within every organism. Physically, we all have minute differences that add up to divide us on greater extents. But metaphysically, the universe paints a different picture. The next time you feel overwhelmed by the way people scream and shout at each other in meaningless arguments, close your eyes and meditate. Be your purest self, and all that conflict would then be nothing more than background noise. Our origins are the same. Our ends are the same. Some will reach Brahm earlier than others. But regardless, it's the one entity where we'll all dissolve back down. And with that, we'll dissolve all our petty differences and disagreements. That being said, it's also hilariously ironic how some scholars back in the time disagreed with the ideas of Advaita itself. This was part 1 of the 2-part video series on the Advaita philosophy. We will discuss the arguments against Advaita and the follow-up modifications of the philosophy in the next part. Stay tuned for part 2, and until next time, chase brilliance.